Okay. All right, welcome. This is part two of my series of why I'm not a Christian. Again, these are my arguments of why I think Christianity is false. I did part one a few days ago. This is part two. There might be a part three, depending how much I get through um, uh, this this deck of slides. Um, uh, One reason I'm doing this, again, this is a summary. I'm not going into a lot of detail on each argument. I'm just presenting the argument and just giving a quick overview. But I will offer a link or give you direction of where you can get more information and where I go into more detail of these arguments. So again, I'm not going to thoroughly support these arguments in this series. This is just a summary of my arguments, but I will point you where I have defended them before, where you can get more information. But the reason I'm doing this series is to get the argument out and also to invoke discussion. And if Christians watch this and they want to discuss some of these points with me or have a debate with me, feel free to contact me. This is what it's all about. I want this to invoke discussion and debate, and hopefully it will lead to more hangouts, more shows, and so forth. So let me get started. So this is why I'm not a Christian, part two. Again, this is a summary. And again, if you want to reach out to me, if you want to discuss any of the things in this series, you can reach me on YouTube. You can email me at my Gmail address. I'm on Facebook and also on Discord. So probably the easiest way is Gmail, but I'm an old timer. So you can reach me at these four avenues. All right, so let's go forward. All right, my next argument is the evil character of Yahweh. Even if this God existed, I would not worship him. Why? Because I think he's evil. I do not believe he's a loving God at all. I had a debate. This is probably one of my very first online YouTube debates with Epicurus, or I think it was by Maximus now. It was hosted on Shannon Rocky's channel. It's mirrored on my channel. I argued that the Bible God is not a loving God based on the Bible's own standard of love, and that standard is found in 1 Corinthians 13. So that's what's called an internal critique, where I just look within the Christian worldview to find absurdities. So my claim is that the Bible God is not loving based on the Bible's own criteria. But by my own criteria, he's evil as well. Thomas Jefferson puts it best. He states the Christian God is a being of terrific character, cruel, vindictive, capricious, and unjust. I read the Apocalypse and consider it merely the rant and ravings of a maniac. What has not meaning admits no explanation. I agree with them. In fact, some of the early Christians believed the God of the Old Testament was evil, or at least not loving. That was particularly prevalent in the Gnostic groups and also the Marcionite groups, led by Marcion, of course. Of course, they were considered heretical. Marcion and the Gnostics actually considered the Old Testament God not the God of Jesus because of his character. They viewed Yahweh, the Old Testament God, as part of the demiurge, who created a flawed physical world, and it was not the God of Jesus. Perhaps if Marcionism won out, perhaps you'd have less criticisms today. Just one moment. Let me turn this on. All right. Got a little better lighting here. All right. So moving on. One example is Yahweh condones slavery. I'm not going to read all these Bible verses, but it's clear that the Bible endorses and condones slavery. A really bad and typical response you'll hear from apologists is, "Oh, it's not as bad as the slavery was in the U.S. South. It's more indentured servitude." That was true for their fellow Israelites, their fellow Hebrews. That was not true for foreigners. So that's just plain out inaccurate, and it's rather deceitful. If someone has actually studied the Bible, they should know better. But you'll hear people like Frank Turek say that, "Oh, it's just indentured servitude." No, it's not the case at all. If you want more information on slavery in the Bible, I can recommend two books. One's from Hector Avalos, called "Slavery, Abolitionism, and the Ethics of Bible Scholarship" by Hector Avalos. And a recent book just came out was Dr. Josh Bowen. You might know him from Skylar Fiction's show and his own YouTube channel, Digital Hammurabi. It's called "Did the Old Testament Endorse Slavery?" Again, by Joshua Bowen, Dr. Josh Bowen. So recommend those two books. So if slavery was evil, God could have said so. He had a chance to say it. He could have had Jesus say it. It doesn't happen. It makes much more sense that the Bible is simply a product of its time. All right, it's going forward. Rape, cruelty, and genocide, all those things the Bible God endorses and sometimes commands. In Isaiah 13:16, their infants will be dashed in pieces before their eyes. Their houses will be plundered and their wives ravished. That's what happens when you do not obey Yahweh. Leviticus 26:29, you shall eat the flesh of your sons and you shall eat the flesh of your daughters. That's what happens. That's what Yahweh threatened the Jews if they did not obey them. If you not obey me, I'm going to make you eat your own children. Ezekiel 5:10, therefore fathers shall eat their sons in the midst of you, and sons shall eat their fathers, and I will execute judgments on you, and any of you who survive I will scatter to all the winds. So you better not disobey Yahweh or else. Numbers 31:17-18. Now therefore kill every man among the little ones, and kill every woman who has known man to be lying with them. But all the young girls who have not known man by lying with them, keep alive for yourselves. So here we're talking about going to foreign lands, destroying them, but taking the young virgins as basically your sex slaves. Apologists will say, "Oh, well, they're just taking them as their wives." Okay, well, a very young girl who you just killed their parents wants to be married to you. Is that really loving? Is that good? Couldn't Yahweh in his omnipotence find a better way of doing this? Why is there violence in the world? I think a major reason is because the lack of resources. We're fighting over resources. The world's limited. There's only so many resources. So what do humans do? They fight over them. But think of Jesus in the Gospels, where he has a crowd of people and he multiplies fish. If God's all powerful, there would be no limited resources. But yet we live in a world where there are limited resources. Reason to believe there is no God. child sacrifice is divinely commanded in Exodus 22:29 through 30. You shall not delay to offer from the fullness of your harvest and from the outflow of your presses. The firstborn of your sons you shall give to me. You shall do likewise with your oxen and with your sheep. 7 days it shall be with its dam, and on the 8th day you shall give to me. Yeah, early on they did endorse child sacrifice. Was it widely practiced? I doubt it. Um, but it is there. This is not my pet theory. Scholars, I learned this from scholars. John Levinson has a book out on this. There was a scholar on Digital Hammurabi that supports this. So, this is not a radical view that I have. Yahweh admitted he did this in Ezekiel 20:25 through 26, where he purportedly said, "Moreover, I gave them statutes that were not good and ordinances by which they could not have life. And I have defiled them through their very gifts and making them offer by fire all their firstborn, that I might horrify them. I did it that they may know that I am the Lord." So here in Ezekiel, it is admitted that Yahweh instituted this child sacrifice. He did it to horrify them. It's an excuse, but still, this is what he commanded. More. What happens if you disobey Yahweh? Jeremiah 18 through 21. Therefore, deliver up their children to famine. Give them over to the power of the sword. Let their wives become childless and widowed. May their men meet death by pestilence. Their youths be slain by the sword in battle. The doctrine of hell is incompatible with a loving God. Think about it. You have God who's supposed to be the paragon of love, the paragon of morality. And it makes his morality, compatible with torture. Think about that. Now, I notice a lot of Christians nowadays, they're starting to turn to a nihilism. Where nihilism is the true Christians go to heaven or live on a new earth. And the rest of us are just annihilated. You're just dead. So verses that talk about eternal punishment. Well, when you're dead, yeah, your death lasts eternally, right? Although you won't be suffering consciously for an eternity. Your death lasts eternally. That's one way of doing it. And I believe we do have that in the Pauline epistles. If you read the Pauline epistles, that seems to be the case, where the Christians are saved and the rest of us we stay dead. But the images of hell by Jesus in the Gospels are: 1, everlasting punishment, eternal destruction, banishment into the darkness, and fire. In Luke 16:23-24, we have a good depiction. In Hades, being in torment, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham far off and Lazarus in his bosom. And he called out, "Father Abraham, have mercy upon me. Send Lazarus to dip the end of his finger into water and cool my tongue, for I am in anguish in this flame." That's a pretty scary depiction of what it's like in hell. Again, the Bible is not consistent at all in regards to the afterlife and judgment and so forth. So, and the Bible itself offers no systematic theology. That's why there's all these different denominations of Christianity. Okay, think of what a abusive relationship is. You hear a lot of Christians saying, "Oh, it's not a religion; it's a relationship. I have a relationship with God." I heard Ray Comfort say that he knows God better than he knows his own wife. That's how strong his relationship with God is. But think of what signs of an abusive relationship is. One is he plays tricks to test the relationship. Well, we find that in the story of Job. He claims they hurt you because they love you. Where do we hear that? How about the the character building, the soul building theodicy for the problem of suffering. We hear that. Demands that you do as they say without question. Lean not on your own understanding, but on every word of God. So don't question God. About in Romans 9, who are you to question me? He says that in Job as well. If you behave or think a way in which they disapprove, they will threaten you with harm. Well, I offered plenty of verses that indicate that earlier. Isolate you from everyone who disagrees you. Be ye separate, says the Lord, right? Tells you what true love is. Well, yeah, he is love, right? Blames you for your shortcoming. In Christianity, heads God wins, tails you lose. Okay, we're all born sinful. We're all born falling short of the glory of God. If you're a Calvinist, we're all born totally depraved. Ask yourself, who made us that way? Right? Who made our nature? Are we in control of our nature, or was our nature given to us? I think the latter. Who gave us that nature? Well, God, of course. More signs of abusive relationship: controlling behavior, jealousy, and possessiveness. I'm a jealous God, remember, God says, whose name is jealous. Misogyny, I don't know why I can't say that. Misogyny. Oh, I'll move on. Mood swings and short temper. Again, I recommend watching my debate with Epicurus on is the Bible God loving. I go into some more details about this. Threats, intimidations, and physical violence. We've seen that in the previous verses. Emotional abuse and put downs. Well, we get plenty of that in the Bible. Blame the victim. Hypercritical nature, unrealistic expectations. Boy, that is clear in Christianity. There's no way you can please God. Even if you lived a perfect life, it still matters because you're born with original sin, right? There's no possible way that you can please God on your own through your own works. That's unrealistic expectations. Okay, here we are, and this leads us to the problem of suffering, problem of evil. This I consider to be a major defeater for Christianity, because one, it's supposed to be a loving God. Two, this is an interventionist God. This is an intervening God. This is a God that interacts with humans in human history, and a God who reveals himself to humans, and supposedly wants to have a relationship with us. So I think both the logical problem of evil and the evidential problem of evil is a problem for Christianity. But the evidential problem of evil, I think, is stronger. It simply states that gratuitous evils are incompatible with the God of Christianity, who's omnipotent, omniscient, and all good and loving. And supposedly this God is supposed to be compassionate, loving, and caring. Psalm 145, 8 through 9, we read, "The Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger and abound in steadfast love. The Lord is good to all, and his compassion is over all that he has made." Well, we don't see that at all in our experience. And if you're a theistic evolutionist, this is a huge problem. Think of all the death and suffering that has taken place even before humans have come into the scene. I talked about this in part one, about how I think the theory of evolution is incompatible with biblical theology. That death came in the world because of Adam's sin, where evolution says death and suffering existed well before humans ever came on the scene. Matthew 6:26. Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather in the barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not more value than they? the author, the anonymous author of Matthew, I think is very naive and ignorant here. Think of all uh, uh, think of all the animals that have gone extinct, that have suffered. We have on record many birds dying of diseases and so forth. Uh, we're just not aware of it, right? But it's happening in nature all the time. What's a typical excuse? Well, you get the free will excuse, you get the character building excuse, you get the excuse that we're just sinners, we deserve it. A real popular one is skeptical theism. And what skeptical theism asserts is that God has morally sufficient reasons for all his apparent gratuitous evils, but we just don't know what they are. He didn't communicate that to us. Well, wouldn't a loving God communicate that to us? You know, particularly a God that intervenes in human history and reveals his nature and his will to us. There's no reason why he can't tell us why he has morally sufficient reasons for all this evil in the world. He could simply tell us. Think of a parent who whose child needs to have painful surgery. You know, the parent will try to tell the child why he has to go through this, surgery, why it's necessary, and the child might not understand it, and the parent might do a bad job trying to explain it to the child. Why? Because we're limited, right? Humans are limited, but this God is not limited. So I don't see any excuse they can give. I think skeptical theism fails. And if God has morally sufficient reasons to do all his suffering, he could have morally sufficient reasons for anything. He could have morally sufficient reasons to lie to us, right? How do we know? How would we know? He has morally sufficient reasons to do so, right? It leads to epistemic nihilism. Okay, next I'm going to look at the character of Jesus. A lot of times you'll hear, "Oh, that's Old Testament. That's the Old Testament God." Jesus came down to show us the true nature of God. And I even come across atheists over the years that say they're Christians in respect to they believe that they're followers of Jesus. They don't believe in God. They don't believe Jesus was divine or he was resurrected from the dead or any of the miracles that happened. They just considered Jesus to be a superior moral teacher. And we should follow his example and his teachings. I beg to differ. I don't think Jesus's respected teachings are original. For example, Jesus 7:12, we read, "So whatever you wish that man would do to you, do so to them, for this is the law and the prophets." So this is the golden rule, right? Jesus was not the creator of the golden rule, nor I don't think any learned Christian would say it was. The golden rule can be found in the Old Testament, but it can be found, among others as well, Rabbi Hillel, Tobit, and also Confucius. So the golden rule is not original to Jesus. It's not original to Judeo-Christian principles. It's not original to the Jewish religion and so forth. It's pretty much you can pretty much find this rule over the whole world, and it's common sense. It's common sense. Here's something that Christians think is a unique teaching from Jesus. Matthew 5:44. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Is that original? No. You can see it in these other philosophers as well. Also, in regards to Jesus saying this, well, it was done in the background of apocalypticism. They believe the end of the age was coming, that God's judgment would soon come. So there's no need to resist evil. If you're slapped in the cheek, turn turn the other cheek and get slapped in the other. Don't bury your dead. Drop what you're doing, and follow me, because it's not important. The end of the world's coming. So again, this is not original from Jesus either. Is Jesus peace loving? Not peace loving, but rather one of deferred violence. So Jesus acted peace loving. And I'm not saying all of Jesus's teachings were bad. He did teach that you should be peaceful, nonviolent while on earth. Take care of each other and so forth. So I'm not saying Jesus's teachings were all bad. His teaching of forgiveness, a good lesson. But why do we think they're good? Based on the standard of us of improving our lives, right? Not because Jesus or God commanded it, but what happens later, right? Jesus is going to come back and open a can of whoop ass. We see that in Revelation 2:23. What happens if you disobey Jesus? And I will strike her children dead, and all the churches shall know that I am He who searches mind and heart. I will give to each of you as your works deserve. So, you're going to disobey me? I'm going to strike your children dead. So this is deferred violence. Jesus is going to come back and sets things straight. His 12 disciples are going to rule over the 12 tribes of Israel. So he promises political power, to his followers. So it's not all peace loving. It's one of deferred violence. And you have many Jesuses described in the Gospels. You have the anti-Gentile Jesus versus the anti-Jewish Jesus. You have the peaceful Jesus versus the violent Jesus. You have the human Jesus versus the divine Jesus. Many of Jesus's moral teaching is in the Gospels are based on apocalypticism. I mentioned that before. Sell all and give to the poor. Hate your family over him. Care little about tomorrow. Christians, do you have a retirement plan? Do you have a 401k plan? Are you worrying about tomorrow? Luke 14, 25 through 7 to 27. Now, great multitudes accompanied him, and he turned and said to them, if any one of you comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brother and sister, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. So you need to basically, give everything to him. You must become his slave. There's different ways to interpret hate here. The Greek is the strongest sense of the word, but I think they'll say, well, not really hate, but favor your family over him. But basically, you have to make him your top priority. Why do I wake up in the morning and go to work? Why do I try to be a good person? I do it for my family. I do it for my loved ones. I do it to improve life, not to please some divine dictator. Bertrand Russell, in Why I'm Not a Christian, writes, I want to say a few words upon a topic that is the question whether Christ was the best and wisest of men. It is generally taken for granted that we shall all agree that this was so. I do not myself. I cannot myself feel that either in the matter of wisdom or in the matter of virtue, Christ stands quite as high as some other people known to history. I think I should put Buddha and Socrates above him in these respects. Psychologist Margaret Knight in Honest to Man writes, Jesus, in fact, was typical of a certain kind of fanatical young idealist, at one moment holding forth with tears in his eyes about the need for universal love, and next furiously denouncing the morons, crooks, and bigots who do not see eye to eye with him. It is very natural and very human behavior, but it's not superhuman. Many of the great men of history, for example, Socrates, have met criticism with more dignity and restraint. So that leads us to the Christian basis for morality. What is the Christian basis for morality? Well, it's God-based, around pleasing God, and based on reward and punishment. For this God, less suffering is not the highest good. The highest good is whatever makes the most free-willed people glorify Him. I'm not going to read all these, but we can see plenty of examples of that. It says, when you do what He says, your reward will be great. So you're looking for a reward here. If you do good by Him, He will reward you. Sell all, distribute to the poor. You will have treasure in heaven. So why do you do it? Because you're going to be rewarded later in heaven. And talk about giving alms. Your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Your reward is great in heaven. It shall be more. What happens if you disobey God? Well, it shall be more tolerable on the day of judgment for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah than for that town. In James, in the book of James, we actually get a good view of what religion should be about. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. Well, that's good, right? That helps society. It helps the common good. It promotes human flourishing. But note what's not in this verse about what makes religion pure. Nothing about following Jesus. Nothing about believing in the cross. Nothing about believing in His in His death or resurrection. No, it talks about helping your fellow man. Yet in Protestant theology, we were told that all righteous deeds are like a filthy rag. In Protestant theology, it's grace based. It's not based on anything you've done. It's not based on works. It's based on God's good grace. It really, when you really boil down to it, Protestant Christianity is about joining the Jesus team. It's about aligning yourself with the right religious political party. A analogy to this I give is, imagine you were a citizen in Libya during the revolt against Gaddafi, and the different armies imagine you're a small business owner in a town, and Gaddafi's army would come in at times, and the rebel army would come in at times, and they might come up to you and they might question your loyalty. Who are you loyal to? Gaddafi or the rebels? Well, who am I loyal to? I'm loyal to the winning party. I'm loyal to the party that's going to win. Who's that? The party that wins in the end, obviously. Now, of course, if you flip a dice, the rebels won in the end. But do you care? No, you're just trying to raise your family. You're just trying to provide a good life for your loved ones. But in Christianity, you better align yourself with the right political party, because if you don't, when they get into power, they're going to come and to hell with you, literally. But again, you need to obey God, and that's the very thing that's emphasized, particularly in the Old Testament. In Deuteronomy 28, we read, if you are not careful to do all the words of this law which are written in this book, that you may fear this glorious and awful name, the Lord your God. That's Yahweh Elohim in Hebrew. Then the Lord Yahweh will bring on you and your offspring extraordinary afflictions severe and lasting, and sickness and grievous and lasting. Oops, I'm missing a verse here. And in the John Gospel, there's a verse that says, Jesus says, if you truly love me, you will obey me. You will obey my commandments. So you can say you love Jesus, but you better obey him. Um, this slide actually I gave in my recent debate with G-Man. It's mirrored on my on my channel. It's a recent video called "Are Atheists Gods?" I give this, and yeah, I'm missing that last verse from the John Gospel, but it's in that PowerPoint I give. All right. The resurrection of Jesus, right? The resurrection of Jesus. This is what the gospel is all about. 1 Corinthians 15. Do I believe in the resurrection of Jesus? Well, of course not. Why? One reason is the gospels are historically unreliable since they are unsupported by contemporary documentation. They were created by unidentified authors decades after the depicted events. We are not sure what their sources were. And there are many themes and elements borrowed from Judaism and pagan religions. The earliest written source for Christianity are the Pauline epistles, in which the author claims to have just seen visions. People claim to have visions of dead people all the time. And there are no minimal facts to draw on to conclude that Jesus rose from the dead. This is the biggest argument you'll hear in debates for the resurrection of Jesus, is the minimal facts argument. These minimal facts change with every new book an apologist comes out with. You'll see, William Lane Craig gave 4. Gary Habermas, again, he'll change his minimal facts with every book he comes out with. Mike Licona and so forth. You'll see people like Frank Turek parrot them. They're all part of the narrative. These supposed facts are simply all part of the narrative of the Gospels. Well, Robert M. Price put it best, where he said, asking if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, how do you explain the empty tomb? That's like asking if the Emerald City of Oz doesn't exist, where does the yellow brick road lead to? It's all part of the story. Speaking of Robert M. Price, in the book The Christian Delusion, he writes, let's imagine ourselves among the apostolic community in those early days. We hear reports from several of the brethren that they have seen the slain Jesus alive again. Naturally, your eyes widen, our ears perk up. And like Thomas, we ask, are you sure? Tell me about it. One tells us, of course, I didn't realize it was Jesus's time. It only dawned on me later. Another says, it didn't really look like him, I admit, but later on I realized it must have been Jesus, and so on. I submit to you that we would be well justified to wonder what might have happened and not be convinced that our friends had actually seen Jesus. Okay, I'm going to take a quick check on my live feed here to make sure that everything looks okay. All right, I think everything looks good. Very good. All right, moving on. All right, the doctrine of atonement is absurd. Probably the most popular doctrine of atonement is the penal substitution theory, that God's holiness requires that sin be punished. So God sent his only son to bear the punishment for humans vicariously, so God can forgive humans for their sin without compromising his holiness and perfect justice. Other theories include the satisfaction theory, the moral influence theory, the ransom theory, the Christus Victor theory, the governmental theory, and the scapegoat theory. There's different theories of why did Jesus need to be crucified for to have our sins forgiven. But one issue is the belief in the atonement saves you rather than the atonement itself. So it's not that Jesus died on the cross and was resurrected that actually saves you. You need to believe it If you do not believe it, Jesus dying on the cross is of no help. So it's the belief in the atonement that saves you, not the actual act itself. Analogy I give is the Superman analogy. Imagine uh, in America, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. A lot of us are asleep, and coming to Earth is a huge meteorite. If this meteorite hits the Earth, it'll be the end of us all. It'll be like how the dinosaurs were wiped off. And Superman sees this asteroid coming, so he flies up to outer space and gives a big Superman punch, and punches the asteroid, and the asteroid disintegrates in a million pieces, and saves the Earth. Um, and we're all saved. And imagine I wake up the next morning, and I never heard this story, but we were all saved, right? I didn't have to believe in that story. I can even curse Superman. I could hear about the story. I could even curse Superman. I said, "Darn you, Superman! Why did you do that?" It doesn't matter. Despite of how I feel, what I know about it, I'm saved. It has nothing to do with my belief or my attitude towards Superman destroying that asteroid. It's just his act himself saved mankind. But no, that's not true with Christianity. You need to actually believe it. Again, like I said before, it's about believing the doctrine of Christianity, the doctrines, joining him, accepting him as your Lord and Savior, bowing down to him. It's about aligning yourself with Jesus. That's really the true thing that saves you in Christianity. Human sacrifice. Why does God need a human sacrifice to save us? In Deuteronomy 12:31, it forbids it, but it was endorsed in other parts of the Bible. I already offered verses of child sacrifice, for example, but later is outlawed. Salvation is based. Salvation is based on the death and resurrection of a piece of meat as well. Think about that. I think overwhelmingly Christians are substance dualists, which means they believe you have a physical body but an immaterial soul, right? So and the soul is what is really you. It holds your consciousness, your personality, and so forth. So literally, you're a ghost inside a machine, inside this piece of meat, inside this piece of flesh. So what's important to God is the death and resurrection of a piece of meat. Jesus' soul didn't die. It was just his fleshly body. Think about that. Salvation is based on the death and resurrection of a piece of meat. The theory of imputation, that Jesus paid our debt of sin, doesn't make sense in light of the Trinity. The idea that Jesus had to pay for sin to himself, because Jesus, the Father and the Holy Spirit, they're all God. They're all one being of God. They're three distinct persons. They all participate in the Godhead. All share the same essence. Why does God have to pay his own debt to himself? It makes no sense. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Something that Jesus preaches against, but here God apparently requires it. Said he needs blood to forgive us. It's based on the veracity of the Adam and Eve story and original sin. Adam and Eve story is obviously fiction. It's not compatible with evolution. A lot of problems with it. And if one small sin deserves infinite punishment, because it affects an infinite being. Why doesn't one small deed that follows God's will bring about an infinite good? So think about that. I talked about this earlier. Heads heads God wins, tails you lose. So, they'll say if you do one sin, well, you just offended an infinite being. And if you offend an infinite being, that deserves an infinite punishment. Why? They just assert that. If if a ant if an ant like bites a elephant, does that deserve infinite punishment? No, the elephant's just going to, well, that's irritating. Boom. You know, uh, you know, how could we defend? How could we possibly offend an infinite being? We're just ants to him. Boy, what a diva this God is. But again, if we do one good deed, why doesn't that generate an infinite good? If one small evil deed generates an infinite, bad because it's against an infinite being, why doesn't one small good deed create infinite good? So thus, sin is more powerful than the atonement, since sin is the natural state of all men, where the atonement will only help a chosen few. Sin is the default, and where atonement isn't. Atonement requires an active action from God. So, and why wait 1,000 years after the supposed fall of man to perform this required act? Think about it. Adam and Eve fell. Why didn't Yahweh crucify Jesus right then and there? Why did he have to wait thousands of years later? I guess if you take the Bible timeline literally, it'd be something like I believe 4,000 years later for Jesus to come on the scene. Why not crucify Jesus? The second after Adam and Eve bit into that fruit. Why did he take so long? Why is a blood sacrifice required? The idea that blood is required is from the book of Hebrews in the New Testament. Hebrews 9:22 says, "Indeed, under the law, almost everyone is purified with blood, and without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins." Well, where's that drawn from? That's drawn from Leviticus 17:11 in the Old Testament. And that reads, "For the life of flesh is in blood, and I've given it for you upon the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that makes atonement by reason of the life." But it simply says that blood offers life for the sacrifice. You take away the blood of the sacrifice, obviously it dies. It's because the blood contains the life force. The critical part of living sacrifice is the blood. It's only one verse, and it doesn't say it's the only way. And it's in the context of the context is dietary laws. And we have other verses that say, well, you can sacrifice wheat and other things that don't have blood. So it's not necessary in the Old Testament to necessarily have a blood sacrifice. In Psalm 51, in other passages, they realize that these sacrifices aren't really that important. Changing your mind, trying to become a better person is more important than doing these ritual sacrifices. We see that in Psalms 51. "The Lord, open my lips, and my mouth will declare your praise. For you will not delight in sacrifice, or I would give it. You will not be pleased with a burnt offering. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, O God. You will not be despised." Proverbs 21, to do righteous and just is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. In Hosea 6:6, "For I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings." um, psychologist, ex-Christian, Marlene Winnell, in Leaving the Fold, writes, the most serious demand for unquestioned beliefs, for unquestioned belief is, of course, the atonement. First, a believer who is to suspend familiar notions of justice, such as punishment of the guilty as opposed to an innocent party. You are then expected to accept the necessity of blood sacrifice for sin, that wrongdoing must be paid for and not necessarily in proportion to the crime. A father's sacrifice of his innocent sons is supposed to be the only just and generous and wonderful. Then temporary 3-day death, actually about 60 hours, 36 hours of that one person is supposed to wipe out all the wrongdoing and ineptitude of the species. And finally, you should believe that all you need to do all you need to do erase the responsibility for your actions and enter a haven of eternal reward is to believe. It's no wonder that once a convert has wrapped his or her mind around this story, anything can be accepted as truth. So yeah, did Jesus really die? No, he had a bad weekend, right? Think about when a when his parents send their son off to war, and their son doesn't come back alive. He sacrifices his life for his country. The parents are never going to see their son again. That is a true sacrifice. Jesus went to the cross knowing that he'll be raised again. He suffered terribly on the cross, but many people were crucified, he knew he was to be resurrected 3 days later to his glory. How much of a sacrifice was that? I think other people suffered greatly. What amazes me is some Christians. I heard William Lane Craig and other apologists say that God made Jesus' suffering on the cross even worse. It's like not only was he nailed to the cross, perhaps God the Father, irritated it more, made it more painful and so forth. That's gratuitous and sadistic. Where in the Old Testament does it say that torture is necessary? It talks about blood sacrifice, the death, but not actually suffering and torturing the sacrifice. But they want to make it. They make an emotional appeal to you. It's like, oh, Jesus died for your sins. Look how much he suffered. Don't you think you owe him? Bible scholar Robert M. Price again writes, some people seem to imagine, whether consciously or not, that God is a cranky theology professor. They has assigned us a task of answering all the questions of existence by a deadline, the day you die. And some are afraid that they show up at the pearly gates and hand in the exam book, and if there are enough wrong answers, especially on big ticket items, ticket questions like the deity of Christ and the atonement, they will get a big red F and go down the chute to hell. Where did this crazy idea of God come from? I know, from church, but it's a bad idea. But what on earth does this have to do with grace? It is a form of Gnosticism, salvation by knowledge. So you will get that. You will hear that from Christians sometime. To be saved, you have to have proper theology. Like you need to be a Trinitarian. If you don't believe in the Trinity, you're going to hell. Or you don't have proper understanding of the resurrection and atonement and so forth. Sometimes it's as far as you have to be a young Earth creationist and so forth. You're in danger of hellfire. Think about it. You can take that to an extreme. It comes down to if you don't think and believe exactly like I do, then you're going to hell. Take it to a far extreme. If my favorite color is blue, if your favorite color is blue, then to hell with you. You have to think just like me. I think this is part of our, of our tribalistic instincts. You have to be part of the tribe. You have to be um, just like me. You have to have the same tastes, the same theology, the same beliefs, everything. I think, I think that's kind of in our nature a little bit. You want everyone to be just like you. You want everyone to, agree with your views. Tertullian writes, "The Son of God was crucified. I'm not ashamed because men must not be ashamed of it. And the Son of God died. It is by all means to be believed because it is absurd. And he was buried and rose again. The fact is certain because it is impossible." So Tertullian, one of the early church fathers, recognized how absurd and impossible, in his words, that this story is. But we have to believe it. Think about um, think about where you live now. Can you tell me right now what happened outside your front door of your house or your apartment or wherever you live 100 years ago to to today? Do you have any idea what happened outside your house 100 years ago? I have no idea. Um, why should I need to know that? Do I need to know that? You know, if I don't need to know that, why do I need to know what happened 2,000 years ago in the Middle East? Why is that so important? Again, this is Gnosticism, that you have to know certain things to be saved. If you don't know these things, then you're doomed. Let me see. All right. It is getting is 4 minutes of 7 my time, so it's almost an hour. I'll stop here. I have like around a dozen more slides. I'll save that part for part 3. But I will stop now the presentation, and I guess with the time I have left, I'll go to side chat, and I'll answer any questions that anyone has, or respond to any comments that anyone has. And if not, then I'll just end it. Part 3, I'll probably do, I'm not sure, whenever I get around to it, probably maybe by next weekend. I'll do part 3, and that will definitely probably be the end of the series, unless I come up with more in the future. But I'll finish off this current slide deck in part 3. So I'll answer any questions you have for me or any comments. I'm just looking real quick. I don't see any so far. All right. Well, I don't see any questions. So I have one question. Iron Charioteer asks, do you think Paul invented Christianity? No, I don't. He invented his version of Christianity to make it more compatible with the Gentiles. Perhaps Gnostic groups existed around Pauline's time. What is the first form of Christianity? Well, I don't think it's one found in Acts. That's for sure. I think Acts is generally a book written to kind of harmonize the different factions of Christianity and so forth. There's elements of Christianity found in the works of Philo of Alexandria. I think Paul's teaching might have actually started out very Marcionite. Remember, if Marcion was a follower of Paul's teaching, and some of Pauline's letters might have been original Marcionites that the proto-orthodox that Barterman uses, or the ecclesiastic ecclesiastic redactor got a hold of and made it more orthodox. Um, but no, I don't believe I would not say that Paul was the originator. I wouldn't say Jesus is necessarily the originator of Christianity either. All the elements of Christianity were in the air, so to speak, at the time. Like I mentioned, Philo, for example, uh, the other savior God mystery cults around that time, apocalypticism that was going on at the time, and so forth. All those things, I think, uh, helped influence Christianity. But no, I would not say Paul was the originator of Christianity. Obviously a big influencer in it, no doubt. So, um, all right, well, very good. Okay, that's the end of part two. It's right at the hour point, which is good. So stay tuned for part three. I hope to do it within a week or two, if not earlier. Um, and again, if you're interested in discussing any of these topics with me or debating them or so forth, uh, feel free to reach out to me. Again, one more time before I leave, I will offer um, my contact information. So again, if you want to contact me, discuss any of these things or debate, whether my channel, your channel, I don't care. Feel free to reach out to me. So, well then, thank you very much for watching, and take care. Bye now.